beloved of the Lord. Today we stand at the doorway of a brand new week, and heaven is ready to respond to your expectation. Have you come into this Monday carrying faith, or have you been carrying fatigue? This is not just another day on the calendar. It is a divine opportunity to realign your spirit with strength and purpose. And I want to know, what are you believing God to shift for you this week? Gratitude is not a feeling you wait for. It is a force you release. And when you release it at the start of your week, it recalibrates your entire spirit. Have you noticed how your mindset on Monday often determines the tone of everything that follows? When you choose gratitude before circumstances speak, you are telling your soul who is in charge. And I wonder what would change if Thanksgiving spoke louder than your worries today. Many people think gratitude comes after the breakthrough, but spiritual power teaches us that gratitude invites the breakthrough. Have you ever thanked God while nothing around you seemed thankful? When you do that, you shift from reacting to life into governing your atmosphere. And tell me, are you ready to take authority over how this week feels? Gratitude resets your inner alignment because it pulls your focus off what is missing and anchors it to what is already working. How often do you start the week rehearsing problems instead of promises? The moment you thank God for breath, strength, and another chance, your spirit exhales. And can you feel how peace enters when pressure leaves? When gratitude becomes intentional, it breaks the cycle of emotional overload that drains your faith. Have you noticed how complaining multiplies fatigue, but Thanksgiving multiplies strength? You may not control everything that happens this week. You can control what you honor first. So tell me, what are you choosing to honor right now? Gratitude reminds your soul that God has been faithful before, and that memory fuels present confidence. Can you think of one moment where you should not have survived but did? When you recall that, fear loses its argument. And I want to know, are you willing to use remembrance as a weapon this Monday? At the beginning of the week, gratitude works like a spiritual reset button, clearing residue from last week's disappointments. Did last week leave you tired, disappointed, or questioning? When you thank God anyway, you are declaring that yesterday does not get to define today, and doesn't that thought already lift some weight off your chest? Gratitude shifts your language, and language shapes your outcomes. Have you noticed how your words sound different when your heart is thankful? Instead of saying, "This week is going to be hard," gratitude teaches you to say, "This week is handled." And which version of that sentence do you want governing your days? When you begin the week with gratitude, you stop chasing motivation and start walking in conviction. How many times have you waited to feel strong before acting strong? Gratitude bypasses emotion and goes straight to faith. And tell me, can you sense faith rising as you focus on what God has already done? Gratitude also restores spiritual sensitivity, making it easier to hear direction and discern timing. Have you ever noticed how clarity comes when complaining stops? When your heart is thankful, your spirit becomes quiet enough to receive instruction. And are you open to hearing guidance that could change the direction of your week? This kind of gratitude is not denial, it is dominion. Do you understand the difference between ignoring reality and governing it? You can acknowledge the challenge and still thank God for strength to overcome it. So tell me, what challenge are you choosing not to magnify today? When gratitude becomes a lifestyle, it rewires your expectations. Are you expecting resistance, or are you expecting results? Gratitude trains your spirit to look for God's hand everywhere, even in delays. And what if the delay you're frustrated with is actually protecting you? Gratitude at the start of the week stabilizes your emotions before chaos has a chance to speak. How often do you wait until stress hits before you pray? When you thank God early, you create emotional immunity. And can you imagine moving through this week unshaken? It also strengthens your inner man because Thanksgiving feeds faith instead of feeding fear. What have you been feeding more lately, faith or frustration? The more you thank God, the more resilient you become. And doesn't your spirit crave that kind of strength right now? Gratitude positions you to recognize opportunities instead of missing them. Have you ever been so focused on what you wanted that you overlooked what was already there? Thanksgiving opens your eyes to doors already unlocked. And I'm curious, what door might God be highlighting for you today? As you choose gratitude, you interrupt cycles of negativity passed down through habits and thought patterns. Have you noticed patterns that repeat every Monday? When you start this week differently, you break agreement with old cycles. And doesn't that feel empowering? Gratitude also activates joy, and joy is a source of supernatural energy. Do you remember the last time joy carried you through something difficult? When you thank God intentionally, joy rises naturally, and can you feel your energy shifting even now? When you practice gratitude, you are telling your spirit that hope is not optional, it is essential. What would your week look like if hope led every decision? Gratitude gives hope a voice. And as hope speaks, strength follows. And tell me, are you willing to let hope speak louder than fear today? Gratitude brings balance, keeping you from emotional extremes. Have you noticed how easy it is to swing from excitement to exhaustion? Thanksgiving keeps you grounded, steady, and focused. And wouldn't consistency feel better than constant emotional highs and lows? As you enter this week with gratitude, you are setting a spiritual tone that influences everything connected to you. Do you realize your attitude affects more than just you? When you thank God, you release peace into your environment, and who around you might benefit from that peace this week. Gratitude is a declaration that God is already present in what you have not seen yet. Can you thank Him for what is forming behind the scenes? When you do, you align with heaven's timing and tell me, are you trusting that something good is already in motion even if you cannot see it yet? Renewed faith is not about pretending you never doubted. It is about choosing to believe again after life has tested you. Have you ever entered a new week carrying the weight of unanswered prayers from the last one? When faith is renewed, it doesn't erase what you've been through. It repositions you to rise above it. And tell me, are you willing to believe again even if you don't have all the answers yet? Faith must be activated intentionally, especially when challenges are predictable and familiar. How many Mondays have you already labeled as hard before they even began? When you activate faith early, you interrupt patterns of defeat before they take root. And doesn't it feel powerful to know you can set the tone instead of reacting to it? Renewed faith changes how you approach obstacles because you no longer see them as threats but as assignments. Have you noticed how some battles keep repeating until your perspective shifts? Faith gives you the courage to face what you once avoided. And I want to ask you, what challenge have you been postponing that faith is now calling you to confront? Faith is strengthened when you stop measuring your future by your past. How often do you disqualify yourself because of what didn't work before? Renewed faith reminds you that yesterday's failure does not have authority over today's possibilities. And can you sense hope beginning to stretch again? When faith is renewed, your inner dialogue changes before your circumstances do. Have you listened to how you talk to yourself at the start of the week? Instead of rehearsing worst-case scenarios, faith teaches you to speak expectation. And tell me, what would happen if your words started agreeing with your prayers? Renewed faith also restores spiritual boldness, especially when fear has made you cautious. Have you been playing it safe because disappointment once hurt too deeply? Faith gives you permission to step forward again without guarantees. And are you ready to trust that God can protect your heart and your purpose at the same time? Faith grows when it is exercised, not when it is observed. How many times have you waited to feel confident before acting? Renewed faith moves even while emotions are still catching up. And doesn't it feel freeing to know that courage can come after obedience? When your faith is renewed, endurance increases. Have you noticed how tiredness often comes from believing something won't change? Faith fuels perseverance by reminding you that progress is still happening even when it's slow. And are you patient enough to stay engaged while God is still working? Renewed faith shifts your expectations from instant results to lasting transformation. Have you been frustrated because things didn't change quickly enough? Faith teaches you to value growth over speed. And can you appreciate the strengthening that's happening in you even if the outcome is still forming? Faith also sharpens discernment, helping you recognize which battles are worth your energy. How often do you exhaust yourself fighting what doesn't matter? Renewed faith brings clarity, allowing you to focus on what aligns with your purpose. And doesn't clarity feel like relief to your spirit? When faith is renewed, fear loses its dominance. Have you noticed how fear sounds loudest at the beginning of the week? Faith does not deny fear's presence. It overrides its authority. And tell me, what fear are you choosing not to give power to today? Renewed faith reconnects you to vision when routine tries to numb your passion. Have you been moving through days without excitement or expectation? Faith reignites vision, reminding you why you started in the first place, and can you remember what once made you hopeful? Faith also reframes resistance, helping you understand that opposition often confirms progress. Have you considered that resistance may be evidence you are moving forward? Renewed faith interprets pressure as confirmation. And doesn't that shift how you view challenges ahead? When your faith is renewed, your response to setbacks becomes calmer and more strategic. How quickly do you usually react when something goes wrong? Faith creates emotional stability, allowing you to respond instead of react. And wouldn't that kind of composure change how you handle this week? Faith renewal requires daily reinforcement, not occasional inspiration. How often do you feed your faith compared to your worries? What you consistently nourish will dominate your perspective. And tell me, what are you choosing to feed first this Monday? Renewed faith strengthens your ability to wait without becoming weary. Have delays tested your patience lately? Faith teaches you that waiting is not wasting time, it is preparation. And can you trust that something valuable is being built while you wait? Faith also restores confidence in God's timing, especially when your timeline feels off. Have you felt behind or rushed by comparison? Renewed faith anchors you in divine timing. And doesn't it feel comforting to know you are not late for what is meant for you? When faith is renewed, gratitude and expectation begin to work together. Have you noticed how thanksgiving increases belief? Faith thrives in an atmosphere of appreciation. And can you see how believing again becomes easier when you acknowledge what God has already done? Renewed faith gives you the strength to keep showing up, even when progress feels invisible. How many times have you wanted to stop because you couldn't see immediate results? Faith assures you that consistency matters. And doesn't that encourage you to stay committed a little longer? Faith renewal also realigns your focus, keeping you from being distracted by other people's journeys. Have you been comparing your process to someone else's outcome? Faith brings you back to your own assignment. And wouldn't it feel peaceful to focus only on what you're called to do? As faith renews, your spirit becomes resilient rather than fragile. Do you notice how setbacks affect you differently now than before? Faith does not make you immune to challenges, but it makes you adaptable. And can you feel that inner strength increasing as you continue to believe? Divine strength is released when you stop trying to survive the week in your own power and allow heaven to supply what you cannot manufacture. Have you noticed how exhaustion often shows up before the battle even begins? When you rely on divine strength, you are admitting that weariness is not a weakness. It is a signal that it's time to draw from a higher source and tell me, where have you been pushing without pausing to receive? Weariness doesn't always come from doing too much. Sometimes it comes from carrying too much emotionally. How many unspoken pressures did you bring into this week? Divine strength doesn't just energize your body, it stabilizes your soul. And can you sense how relief begins when you stop holding everything together alone? Fear thrives where strength feels depleted. Have you noticed how fear sounds louder when you are tired? When divine strength rises, fear loses its grip because strength reminds you that you are not facing life unsupported. And what fear has been speaking to you lately that no longer deserves your attention? Divine strength renews your capacity to keep going without becoming hardened or numb. Have you ever kept moving but lost your joy along the way? Strength from God restores sensitivity without stealing stamina. And wouldn't it feel good to be strong and still soft-hearted? When divine strength replaces weariness, your reactions begin to change. How quickly do you usually respond when pressure shows up? Strength allows you to pause, breathe, and respond with wisdom instead of panic. And doesn't that kind of calm feel like power? Many people confuse strength with self-reliance, but divine strength is about surrender. Have you been trying to prove that you can handle everything? When you release control, strength rushes in to support what obedience requires. And are you willing to let go of the need to manage outcomes? Divine strength strengthens your inner man before it affects your circumstances. Have you been waiting for things to change before you feel better? God often fortifies you first so that when change comes, you are ready to sustain it. And can you trust that preparation is happening even now? Weariness has a way of distorting perspective. Have small things felt heavier than they should lately? Divine strength brings clarity, helping you see challenges in proportion instead of magnification. And doesn't clarity alone lighten the load? Strength from God also restores emotional balance when stress has pulled you in too many directions. How often do you feel mentally scattered at the start of the week? Divine strength gathers your focus, anchoring your thoughts, so you are not overwhelmed by everything at once. And can you feel your mind settling as you listen? When divine strength is released, it renews motivation without pressure. Have you ever forced yourself to stay productive while feeling empty inside? God's strength energizes purpose rather than performance. And wouldn't it feel different to move? Because you are empowered, not because you are afraid to stop. Divine strength also helps you release guilt over rest. Have you felt guilty for needing a pause? Strength teaches you that rest is not quitting, it is refueling. And can you allow yourself to receive without self-judgment today? When strength replaces weariness, your faith becomes steady instead of fragile. Have you noticed how tired faith feels shaky faith? Divine strength stabilizes belief, making it easier to trust even when answers are delayed. And doesn't steady faith feel safer than emotional highs and lows? Fear often disguises itself as logic. Have you ever called fear being realistic? Divine strength exposes fear's disguise and replaces it with courage that is grounded, not reckless. And what would courage look like for you this week? Strength from God renews your ability to engage challenges without dread. How many things have you been avoiding because they feel too heavy? Divine strength doesn't remove responsibility. It equips you to carry it well. And can you imagine facing those things without anxiety? Divine strength also restores hope when disappointment has drained expectation. Have you been hesitant to hope again? Strength makes space for hope by reminding you that endurance has already carried you this far, and doesn't remembering that give you confidence. When weariness lifts, your discernment sharpens. Have you noticed how fatigue clouds decision making? Divine strength clears mental fog, helping you choose wisely instead of impulsively. And wouldn't that clarity change how you move through this week? Divine strength allows you to show up fully without pretending. Have you felt pressure to appear stronger than you feel? God's strength supports honesty, allowing you to be real without being weak. And can you feel the freedom in not having to perform strength? Fear often predicts worst-case scenarios. Have your thoughts been running ahead of you lately? Divine strength brings you back into the present, grounding you in what you can handle today, and doesn't focusing on today feel manageable. When divine strength flows, peace follows naturally. Have you been chasing peace through control? Strength teaches you that peace comes from trust, not from managing every detail. And are you ready to let peace settle instead of striving? Divine strength also renews your compassion for yourself. How harsh have you been with your own limitations? Strength teaches you to honor progress instead of perfection. And doesn't kindness toward yourself feel healing? As strength increases, your resilience grows. Have setbacks been affecting you less than they used to? Divine strength doesn't eliminate setbacks, but it reduces their impact. And can you recognize how much stronger you already are? Divine strength empowers you to move forward without dragging yesterday's weight into today. Have you been carrying last week's stress into this one? Strength releases what no longer serves you, and doesn't letting go feel lighter. When strength replaces fear, your confidence becomes quiet but firm. Have you noticed confidence doesn't always need to be loud? Divine strength anchors confidence internally, so it doesn't depend on external validation. And wouldn't that kind of confidence change how you walk into this week? Divine strength renews your spirit so that hope can breathe again. Have you been holding your breath emotionally? Strength invites you to exhale, to trust, and to continue without forcing the next step. And can you feel that breath returning now? Alignment begins with awareness, because you cannot realign what you refuse to examine. Have you noticed how quickly your thoughts run ahead of your faith at the start of the week? When your mind, your mouth, and your expectations are out of sync, your energy becomes scattered. And tell me, have you felt pulled in too many directions lately? Your thoughts are the first place alignment must happen. What have you been thinking about most when you wake up on Monday morning? If your thoughts are filled with pressure and dread, your spirit will follow that direction. But when your thoughts are anchored in promise, strength begins to form. And can you feel how your mood shifts just by changing what you focus on? Alignment requires intention, not accident. How often do you let your thoughts run without correction? When you consciously choose thoughts that agree with what God has said instead of what circumstances are saying, you begin to regain authority over your inner world. And doesn't that feel empowering? Your words are the next point of alignment, because words give direction to what you believe. Have you listened to how you speak about your week? When your words contradict your prayers, you create internal resistance. And tell me, what would change if your words started reinforcing your faith instead of canceling it? Words are containers, and they carry either expectation or limitation. Do your words sound hopeful or heavy? When you speak alignment, you are not denying reality, you are defining it. And can you sense how much influence your voice actually has? Alignment of words requires discipline, especially when emotions are loud. How often do you speak frustration before you speak faith? When you pause and choose your words carefully, you interrupt cycles of negativity that try to dominate your atmosphere. And doesn't that pause feel like power? Expectations complete the alignment process because what you expect quietly directs how you prepare. What are you expecting from this week? If you expect struggle, you brace for survival. If you expect God's involvement, you prepare for cooperation. And which expectation feels more life-giving? Misaligned expectations often come from past disappointments. Have unmet hopes shaped how cautiously you believe now? Alignment invites you to release old assumptions and make room for fresh outcomes. And can you feel hope stretching even as you reconsider what's possible? When thoughts, words, and expectations align, your faith becomes focused instead of fragmented. Have you noticed how exhausting it is to believe and doubt at the same time? Alignment simplifies your inner world, allowing faith to flow without obstruction. And wouldn't simplicity bring relief? Alignment doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes intentional. Have you confused struggle with failure? When alignment is present, even challenges serve a purpose. And can you see how purpose changes how you endure? Your thoughts shape your emotional climate. What emotions have been dominating your mornings? Alignment helps you regulate emotions instead of being ruled by them. And doesn't emotional stability sound like something you want this week? Words shape your emotional responses. Have you noticed how saying something out loud makes it feel heavier or lighter? When your words agree with truth, your emotions begin to settle. And can you feel tension easing as your language changes? Expectations influence your reactions. How surprised do you get when things don't go as planned? Aligned expectations create flexibility, allowing you to adapt without losing peace. And wouldn't adaptability make this week feel less stressful? Alignment also sharpens discernment, helping you recognize which thoughts deserve attention. Do you challenge every thought, or do you accept them all as truth? When alignment increases, you become selective, choosing thoughts that serve your growth. And doesn't discernment feel like clarity? Words spoken in alignment carry authority. Have you ever noticed how confident words feel different when they're rooted in belief? Alignment gives weight to your declarations. And can you imagine speaking with that kind of confidence daily? Expectations anchored in faith protect you from disappointment. Have you tied your joy too closely to outcomes? Alignment teaches you to expect God's presence regardless of results. And doesn't that shift bring peace? When alignment is missing, confusion multiplies. Have you felt unsure about decisions you once felt confident about? Realignment clears confusion by bringing everything back into agreement. And can you feel clarity beginning to return? Thought alignment requires daily reinforcement. How often do you renew your mind intentionally? Without renewal, old patterns resurface. And doesn't that explain why some struggles feel repetitive? Word alignment requires courage. Are you willing to sound hopeful even when things are uncertain? Speaking aligned words sometimes feels risky. It strengthens faith muscles. And can you feel those muscles being activated? Expectation alignment requires trust. Do you trust God enough to expect good again? Alignment asks you to believe without controlling outcomes. And doesn't releasing control feel both challenging and freeing? When thoughts, words, and expectations align, your actions follow naturally. Have you noticed how easier obedience becomes when you're internally aligned? Alignment removes resistance, making forward movement feel lighter. And wouldn't that ease change how you approach this week? Alignment also restores consistency. Have you struggled with starting strong and finishing tired? When alignment is present, energy is sustained? And can you imagine maintaining focus without burnout? Thoughts aligned with truth build resilience. How quickly do setbacks discourage you? Alignment strengthens your inner response, helping you recover faster. And doesn't resilience feel like progress? Words aligned with faith build momentum. Have you felt momentum slipping lately? Aligned speech fuels perseverance. And can you sense momentum beginning to rebuild? Expectations aligned with promise keep you steady during delays. How patient are you when answers take time? Alignment helps you wait without anxiety, and wouldn't patience make the waiting easier? Alignment is a daily choice, not a one-time decision. Are you willing to check in with yourself throughout the day? Each adjustment brings you back into harmony. And can you see how small shifts make a big difference? When alignment increases, peace becomes more consistent. Have you been chasing peace instead of cultivating it? Alignment creates peace internally, and doesn't internal peace feel more reliable? As alignment deepens, your confidence grows quietly. Have you noticed confidence doesn't always announce itself? Alignment anchors confidence within, making it less dependent on external affirmation. And wouldn't that kind of confidence change how you show up? Alignment also influences how others experience you. Have people noticed a shift in your tone or presence lately? When you are aligned, peace spills over, and can you imagine the impact that has on your environment? Thoughts aligned with faith create space for creativity. Have you felt mentally blocked? Alignment clears mental clutter, allowing inspiration to flow. And doesn't inspiration feel refreshing? Words aligned with truth strengthen relationships. Have misunderstandings increased lately? Alignment improves communication, helping you speak with clarity and kindness. And can you feel relationships benefiting already? Expectations aligned with purpose keep you moving forward. Are you clear on why you're doing what you're doing? Alignment reconnects you to purpose, and doesn't purpose energize effort? As alignment settles in, resistance decreases. Have you noticed less inner conflict? Alignment quiets inner debate, allowing peace and confidence to coexist. And can you sense that quiet forming now? Alignment positions you to receive what this week holds without strain. Are you open to receiving without overthinking? When alignment is present, reception becomes natural, and doesn't that feel like ease? Alignment is not perfection. It is agreement. Are you willing to agree with God even when you don't fully understand? Agreement invites flow. And can you feel that flow beginning to move through your thoughts, words, and expectations right now? Declaring victory is not arrogance. It is agreement with what God has already spoken over your life. Have you noticed how the way you start speaking about your week determines how you walk through it? When you declare victory before the evidence appears, you are choosing faith over feelings. And tell me, are you willing to speak what you believe instead of what you fear? Victory declarations shift your posture from defense to confidence. How often do you enter a new week bracing for impact instead of expecting progress? When you declare victory, you are not ignoring challenges. You are announcing that challenges will not have the final say. And doesn't that immediately change how heavy the week feels? Hope is sustained by what you repeatedly affirm. What have you been affirming lately without realizing it? When your declarations align with hope, your spirit becomes resilient. And can you sense how resilience feels different from mere optimism? Declaring victory helps you break agreement with negative cycles. Have you noticed how some struggles feel like they repeat every week? When you intentionally declare victory, you interrupt old patterns and establish new expectations. And doesn't it feel empowering to know cycles can be broken? Victory declarations train your mind to look for solutions instead of problems. How quickly does your attention go to what might go wrong? When you speak victory, Your focus shifts toward possibility, and can you feel your thoughts opening up instead of narrowing? Hope grows when it is spoken out loud. Have you ever felt hope rise just by saying something positive with conviction? Declaring victory gives hope a voice, and when hope has a voice, despair loses influence. And doesn't that feel like taking your power back? When you declare victory over the week, you are setting boundaries for your emotions. Do you allow circumstances to dictate how you feel? Victory declarations remind your emotions that they are not in control. And can you feel stability forming as you speak with intention? Victory is not only about outcomes, it is about endurance. Have you defined victory only as success without struggle? Declaring victory means you expect strength to endure, wisdom to navigate, and peace to remain. And doesn't that broaden your understanding of what winning looks like? Hope-filled declarations guard your heart against discouragement. How quickly do setbacks affect your mood? When victory is already declared, setbacks lose their ability to derail you. And can you sense how that creates emotional safety? Declaring victory over the week aligns your actions with expectation. Have you noticed how you prepare differently when you expect good things? Your behavior follows your beliefs, and when you believe victory is possible, your effort reflects that confidence. And doesn't that motivate you to show up fully? Victory declarations also influence your spiritual atmosphere. Do you realize words carry energy into your environment? When you speak victory, you release peace, clarity, and confidence around you. And can you imagine how that affects everyone you interact with? Hope strengthens when it is shared. Have you ever spoken encouragement and felt encouraged yourself? Declaring victory not only lifts you, it lifts others who hear it. And doesn't that make you more intentional about what you say? Declaring victory keeps your focus forward instead of backward. How often do you replay last week's disappointments? Victory statements redirect your attention to what lies ahead. And can you feel the relief of not dragging yesterday into today? Victory declarations also restore courage. Have you been hesitant to take steps because you fear failure? When you declare victory, courage rises because fear no longer dominates the narrative. And doesn't courage feel like fresh energy? Hope is reinforced when you refuse to speak defeat. What words have you been casually using that undermine your faith? Declaring victory requires awareness of language. And can you sense how changing your words begins changing your outlook? Victory declarations help you stay grounded during uncertainty. Do unknowns make you anxious? When you declare victory, you anchor yourself in trust rather than control. And doesn't trust feel steadier than anxiety? Declaring victory also prepares you to handle success responsibly. Have you thought about how you will manage blessings when they come? Victory statements shape humility and gratitude alongside expectation. And can you see how balance protects growth? Hope over the entire week keeps you from compartmentalizing faith. Do you only believe for certain areas of your life? Declaring victory invites hope into every moment, conversation, and decision, and doesn't that integration feel whole? Victory declarations remind you that progress is not always visible. Have you been discouraged by slow movement? Declaring victory keeps you engaged even when results are forming quietly. And can you trust that unseen progress still counts? Hope-filled declarations strengthen consistency. Have you struggled with starting strong and losing momentum? When victory is declared daily, momentum is maintained. And doesn't consistency feel more sustainable than bursts of effort? Declaring victory also influences how you interpret resistance. Do you see resistance as failure or confirmation? Victory declarations help you see resistance as evidence that you are advancing. And doesn't that shift reduce frustration? Hope stabilizes your emotions during highs and lows. How extreme do your emotional swings get during the week? Declaring victory creates emotional balance, helping you remain steady. And can you feel that steadiness settling in? Victory declarations keep your spirit engaged even when motivation dips. Do you rely on feeling inspired to stay committed?